gonna be really bad rain, so be careful. If you need to come Tuesday, it's also okay. Okay? If it's better for you. It's not a problem.
Okay.
Yeah. It's Tyson's friend's father. Oh, the guy from the Valley. No, coming out. I don't know. Stephen Weiss. Yeah. There's that's just yeah. It was the last one I did before COVID.
Is that right? I remember the bat mitzvah, but I
didn't
remember
that.
It
was Beshala.
That's right. I know. Oh, of course.
And she made a thing, like a comic thing.
Yes, a graphic novel, I think.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I forgot the graphic novel. I definitely remember Bashala. She's really beautiful.
Yeah. It's like, yeah, I'll put you on a waiting list, kind of thing. Yeah. Good. They're good. Yeah. Shauna's loving New York. She has just getting over the flu, but she's good. He was here, but she may have slipped away. I don't know. I got home at 2:15. So I gave them all of our toiletries from upstairs because the mayor's office. We've contacted the mayor's office 3 times and they just have never gotten back to us. So they mentioned something about needing toiletries for refugees. I said, just take them. Like I'm no longer interested in trying to contact the mayor's office. Take it. So we filled a car of those toiletries. So it might have ended before 2, but I left it 2.
That's what she really would like.
Yeah. Small. Yeah, well, by the time I got the letters out for you and then I went back in, I wrapped up. Exactly. So we'll see. She watches that.
Well, we're almost on the cusp. On the cusp.
What time's your flight tonight? To New York. And then, for some reason I'm going to New York from London. Is it on the way back? Are you doing that? Oh. Yeah.
I think food, learning, Mario Vidal.
No.
I think so. Yeah. Okay.
I'm going to England. But he's talking about tonight.
Oh, I didn't hear.
Yeah, he's going tonight to Israel.
What she said, get food and we can start learning.
Whoa.
An embarrassment to Bridget.
Did you have people over? Oh. Oh, whoa. Whoa. Wow. Wow. I don't know. Oh, yeah. She does, oh my gosh, what's it called? The infertility That's the only person I can imagine Cheryl was talking about in her email. I can't picture anybody else who would apply. Unless my brother is possibly in Israel. I guess there's a lot of people on that class who apply. But yeah, I don't know.
Do you think your brother will not apply? Eventually, or think he would?
I think he would if he didn't have to rush me. I think he would. Right now he's second, so he would go in for next year.
This is just a second.
He's right now interning at BS.
Do you think he wants to work as a rapper?
That's pretty festive. I don't know. I don't get the sense that anyone is close right now really does, but maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. I think that he initially started because he thought that that quality was big. Looks like he loved it. Again, like a whole. It was funny, the thing that I did in Chicago. My track was like incredible. I think there was like a bit around the face, but it was really interesting to like hear what people are experiencing. They were all before. It was really interesting how they're East Coast Midwest jewel girl. I don't think you're probably good.
What?
I don't know that you'll need more.
No?
Yeah, I mean, this would be a large crowd.
You guys came to me, I didn't choose the number. Considering.
No, I know, I just didn't want you to have to break your back to take out more than we'll need.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Back in bucks.
What's that?
Back in bucks. Fix the bucks.
No?
Was that a reference to something?
All of me.
You should just say
Lily
no.
Tomlin, Steve Martin,
Oh.
80s.
Yeah, I haven't seen that in like 20 years.
Yeah.
I didn't do that.
Meaning just because we put it in our family, it's not normal, normal conversation.
Back in bucks. Fix the bucks.
You should have just said, no, this is just, it's a take of mine. Do you want to say anything about people saying this? Or that's how you say it?
I'll stick to like.
I told people at the end of the minute, said they enjoyed it. Like Brett. Oh, the students from. So, he's not saying that, but he just gets the. Just like. Yeah. That's it. Because I'm using my rules, I'm working Thursday, and then if people want to say, yeah. He said that it's well, first of all, it's like fine. Well, Mark's like, yeah. Yeah.
Everybody should be here for that one.
No, friend, I'm trying to.
Don't be worried about that.
Oh.
4 hours. Rested.
Really?
It's 12 hours last night.
Is that for good?
I roast my dinner. Various
So a lot of time.
I did,
You did?
but I think I'm actually over rested.
Everyone is
Everyone's on their own flights.
Oh.
I
A lot of people
I
leave
shot
tomorrow.
this 100 times. I tried to get as far east as I could at my dump. Miles for that,
Yeah.
where I can do 200 miles, and then I'm switching to LL flight.
right. Exactly. So, yeah.
When did he go?
New Year's Eve. Yeah, because war, and then the United States. And then also saying, so I could go if I go to a month. And then I could take a board. Study Jordan. He said it's free. Across the border. And it was like,
It is easy, that is true.
no. And then it's sort of like, so is that, and I thought, that's a hard.
Yeah, well,
no.
it's nice when it's sitting right here.
Or Josh Bush still on a miles flight. So I upgrade. Only way you can do it on an upgraded ticket from miles to fly LA, Chicago, Chicago, Hamburg.
You go this way to the Rosa.
Okay?
Or that way.
She's up for the challenge.
No, because both. And then like they would
Border, I mean, I agree with it now, but like, I crossed that border multiple times. It's not.
Across the Alamo Bridge.
Yeah, I crossed it once with my grandparents when I was living there. Then we crossed it for school, like we did it. There was like some kind of, I forget what, through which organization, but we did it as for, but I never did it alone.
Yeah. No, he's gonna get into work.
Did you have a menorah with you?
I don't know, I mean, I bet.
Yeah.
Okay. So you can probably yeah, yeah. And then he switched to Hebrew, and it was like a thing.
My brother studied Arabic, and then the Arab Spring started, and he was airlifted by Elon Tar. He was airlifted into Israel.
I got
Hello. So good to see you. Good to see you too. I saw you walking with me. I was just yes. How you doing? I'm good. How are you? I'm good.
it was kind of strange. I forget sometimes when I come.
Yeah.
I bumped into Chase and I'm like,
Oh, were you there this morning? Oh, so nice.
Right. I did.
Yeah. So nice. Well, everyone. It feels a little bit funny to have a microphone in a living room, but we're on. Maybe it's needed. Hello. I'm gonna start talking. Okay. So we are gonna first of all thank you to Tyson and Naomi for having us in your home. Lovely to be here. It's a little bit different than Pilch Hall, but you know, as soon as it's done and we have some. Paul, you can't hear us? Well, I'm not sure how to fix that, but Hector's on, so Hector will fix it. If he can hear us, I guess he might not be able to hear us.
Yes, everything is fine.
Oh, Hector says everything is fine. Great.
I hear you fine.
Okay, awesome.
So the problem may
Me
be
too.
on Paula's end.
Okay. This is great. Thank you. Okay. So we're gonna actually not look at the Parsha at all. We are going to look at texts on how Jews deal with refugees. So this Shabbat is, I think, the 6th annual highest refugee Shabbat. And though I have not worked at Talmud Beth Am for 6 years, I know that this has been a meaningful Shabbat for our social action committee, and especially to Tyson and Rachel Rubin Green in the most recent past, in terms of putting together meaningful learning and exposure to what it means for Temple Beth Am to be involved in both the refugee crisis, but also in making sure that we as Jews are learning what it means to take care of the stranger and take care of especially a stranger who is in need of refuge. So we're going to look at a few texts. Now, I put a lot of text on this source sheet and we're not going to get to all of them. So depending on how the conversation goes, we might get to even fewer of them than I expect. But I wanted you to have them. And there are obviously many more that are not on this source sheet that talk a lot about this as something that's important to Jewish tradition, and also in terms of the mitzvot that we carry around with us, which is connected to this past week's parsha, right? Connected to the idea of receiving commandments and how we then follow them. So if everyone can take, I think there should be enough for everybody to have one. I honestly don't remember how many copies I made, but start with everybody taking one. If we need to shuffle them around, we can. Okay. I did remember to put page numbers on this source sheet, and I'm very, very proud of myself. So we're going to use them. Thank you. I think it's the first time I've done it ever. So I'm very pleased. So we're going to look at the first verse here, which if you were to just look up Jews and refugees, this is probably the first text that would come up. Though again, not the only one, but definitely the verse in Vayikra and Leviticus that allows us to jump off into a larger conversation about refugees. Does someone, actually, let me read it because of live stream, and then I'll open it up. Okay. I'm just going to read it in the English, and then I'm going to pick out some pieces in the Hebrew. Does everybody have one? Yeah. Okay, awesome. When a stranger resides with you in your land, so the word stranger that's being used here is ger. How is ger sometimes translated otherwise?
Alien?
Yeah, alien, right? Someone who's unknown to us. So though stranger could also mean the same thing when we think of someone who is coming into our midst and then residing with us. Often the word alien is used instead of just stranger, someone who might be passing through who we don't know. You shall not wrong that person, right? So a person who you don't know is now going to take residency within a land that you live in, and you shall not wrong them. That's already a pretty heavy statement and a really beautiful way of thinking about how we welcome people into our midst. The stranger who resides with you shall be to you as one of your own citizens. So a phrase that you probably all will recognize when I read it in just a second, ve'ahavta lo kamocha. And you're going to love that person as you love yourself, right? So this idea of not just, make sure that they have a house and make sure that you're nice and make sure that you say hello and good morning, but really take care of them like you would anybody else in your community. And then the Torah goes as far as to say, really, as you would take care of yourself or your own family. For you were strangers in the land of Egypt. I am Adonai, your God. Okay. Ki gerim hayitem ba'eretz Mitzrayim, ani Adonai Elohechem. So where does this come from? Like, what general story does this come from? Yeah, a time where we too were the unknown people, right? In someone else's land. We were strangers. Now, someone might go about and say, well, that was kind of our story most of Exodus through the rest of our Torah, right? Anytime we were traveling, we were then strangers in another land that was not our own. But what it's putting out here is that you not only were you categorized as that before, but you felt the way they did before. And that's really important. It wasn't just that you could be called a refugee, but that you understand the feeling, that you understand the struggles. So just from this first verse, what are we picking up on here are the right things to be doing as a Jewish community for those who are in the status of refugee. What are we supposed to do? Okay, so don't be xenophobic, which is kind of what Nina said. But don't keep people out just because they are unknown to you or foreign to you. Great. Anything else? Yeah. Great. Fabulous, fabulous. So if we were going to put this into the language of our own community, whether that's Temple Beth Am or your neighborhood, what would that look like? Yes.
Welcoming the people we welcome today.
Great, exactly. Welcoming people in, not making them feel as though they are strange to our, in this case, institution, right? But to let them in just like we let everybody else in. Gary? Great. To make sure that they also have a voice, right? That I thought that was really special today when, I'm forgetting his name right now, spoke in Spanish. And instead of interrupting him to translate, they let him get through his whole story in Spanish, and then we heard it in English. I actually thought that was a very powerful way of saying, you share your story in the way that's going to make you most comfortable, and anybody in the room who can will understand what you're saying, and then we'll make the rest of the people feel comfortable by telling them what you've said, right? Yeah, Viva.
I just want to echo that because
Yeah.
you saw that their friends that they were with were videotaping them and cheering them on. But it seemed that it was like there was an element of stage fright to get up in front of the room to speak.
Yeah.
Right. But also there was a truth telling
Sure.
for them to speak their truth and their experience and
Right.
us to witness it. So it was
Right.
powerful on so many levels for them.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Right, there was this, yeah. There was this witness aspect, right, of like us being able to hear what they have to say, but then to be able to see that the people who did understand them were really championing them in their language to make sure that they were seen the way that they should be seen, right? That it's almost kind of our fault for not understanding, right? Like it shouldn't be on them to make sure that we understand. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Anything else based off of this one sentence? Okay, so I just put here in this box just so that you kind of have statistics, right? This is one of the 36 times that we come up to this mitzvah of caring for the stranger. So you've probably all heard that before. It often comes out when we're sharing the Pesach story, right? This number 36 is a very large number, right? That this is something that is clearly very important to our Torah and important to the way that we understand our story as a way of sharing in other people's stories. Okay, we're going to look at the Mishnah Torah, which is Rambam, Maimonides' text. And I'm not going to actually read the whole thing. I'm just going to read the beginning, but you can see that the second half, which I'm not going to read through, is different texts, different quotes that he's using to prove the point that I will read out loud. Redeeming captives takes precedence over feeding and clothing the poor. It's a pretty bold statement, right? And one that we wouldn't necessarily put before the feeding and clothing of the poor. Why do you think that? Why would we think clothing and feeding the poor would be would be the priority? Okay, so people are in pain and that's an immediate need, right? So we're taking care of that. Why else?
Also, captives
Yeah.
are not necessarily visible.
Great,
right?
great.
And, poor and needy are right in front of us. So we
Fabulous.
have to get those other people that-
Right, right. So what Donna just said is exactly what I was thinking as well, that captives often are thought of, or not necessarily seen, and therefore not always thought of, right? That it might be harder to understand how to be in connection with them, whereas the needy are most of the time right in front of us, whether that's because they're on the streets in modern day or because they're within our community asking for that kind of help. They're often more visible to us than captives might be. Now, I'm using the word captives here, but also trying to get us to think about those who are not fully free, right? So who in today's, when we were hearing the stories today, right, from those who have gone through different types of freedom from places that were not safe for them, right? They might not be captives, but they might feel captive within their own story, within their own existence, and not free in the same way. So shvuim, like the hostages in Israel, which, by the way, there's different words for the hostages in Israel depending on how you're speaking about them. But shvuim is one of the words that's used, and obviously that is not the same as refugee, but I'm using it in the same kind of context as refugee right now in terms of their lack of attaining freedom or feeling as though they are free in a community. Okay, and there is no commandment as great as redeeming captives, for a captive is among the hungry, thirsty, naked, and is in mortal danger. And one who averts one's eye from redeeming him or her violates then all of these different quotes that come from our tradition. So what do we see here from the Rambam, which is obviously a more modern source than the Torah? What's the next step here for us in terms of understanding the stranger? It goes back to Donna's point, if I'm going to give you a little bit of a clue.
You have to look at the circumstances. There's going to be different levels of hardship, okay? And that has to be taken into consideration.
Great. So there's different level of hardship to take into consideration for sure. How can we layer this onto our understanding of taking care of those in our community who might be new to the community? And
No, I'm thinking that a big issue. Their lives are in danger. A lot of them have gone back to El Salvador.
Right. So the question that I'm asking is how is this text, this Rambam text, connecting us back to this idea of helping those who are in our community who might be refugees, might have been captive at some point? What are we being asked to do here? Yeah, Marlies. Right, not to forget them. And I would go one step further, to look for them. Right, to go beyond just that which we can see. That's why I was giving Donna's response as a clue, not to just deal with those in our midst who we know are in need, but also to not pry, but really learn about someone's story to know, is this a person for whom they need a little bit of that extra help to start to feel as comfortable as possible in our community. So we're gonna skip over the Psalms text and look at the Breshit text on the bottom here. This is one that you'll know well, but this comes before the Leviticus text, and it says, "Vayomer leAvram yada teda ki ger ihyeh zaracha ba'eretz." So this idea that we're already being given at the beginning of our Torah, that you should know that your offspring are going to be strangers. It's a known fact. They're going to be strangers in a land that's not theirs. and this is just foreshadowing for the rest of the Torah, really for the rest of our existence, but for the rest of the Torah, that there are going to be points in time where we are not necessarily known in the land that we end up in, that we are going to be refugees in our own existence, and they shall be enslaved and oppressed for 400 years. Okay, we're not going to get into that too much, but just this idea here that already in the beginning with Avram, when he's being told to go, right? He's being told to go to a land that will be his, but that starts off not his, right? And that he should remember that feeling. He should remember what it was like to be in a land where he needed to be taken care of, and therefore he should take care of others. Hello, welcome. That this person just left for Israel, so you can sit here if you'd like. Not to call him out, but okay. So turn the page over. We're gonna do one more. We're gonna do one more Torah text, and then I'm gonna pause to see if anybody has any thoughts to share. So in Exodus, which is in this week's this week, the one that we're in now is Parsha. You shall not wrong a stranger or oppress him, for you are strangers in the land of Egypt. Okay, this is a very known phrase. It reminds you a little bit of the first verse that we read, because again, this comes up in the Torah 36 times, right? So this is a phrase that is now coming up, but what's the difference of this phrase? You shall not wrong a stranger or oppress them, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt. How is that different than the first Leviticus phrase? Okay.
They don't understand. If they ask the directions to Wilshire Boulevard, don't give them the directions to Venice Boulevard, don't take.
Okay, so don't take advantage of their lack of knowledge. Okay, but what's the difference between the Exodus quote and the Leviticus quote? Aviva, do you want to say something? Oh, I thought I saw your hand. Yeah, Leonard. Yeah.
The first one.
Yeah. Great. So the first one, as Leonard's pointing out, is that we should be kind, right? That you should love them as you love yourself, that you should be nice, that you should make sure that they feel welcome, right? But then, as Leonard's pointing out, this second verse, which actually comes first, right? Exodus comes before Leviticus, but this second verse on our source sheet from Exodus is saying that you should also be empathetic, because not only did you go through this, but you might end up treating someone who is unknown to this space the way that you were treated, and that would become oppression. So what Exodus is really trying to guard us from is this idea that by having someone who might be unknown in our midst, we might be taking care of them in such a way that we think we are welcoming, but we have to do what Leviticus says, which is love them like we love ourselves, put them on the same level. We can't just try to take care of them kind of from the bottom up because we believe that's where they are. We're actually supposed to elevate them to where we would hold our own selves, right? The standard that we would hold ourselves. So the work that Tyson and the whole team has done to make sure that the family that we took under our, I'll call it wings, to make sure that they were housed, it wasn't just, oh, here's a house, right? It was taking care of them, making sure they had medical help, making sure that if they had legal help, that we helped them with that, making sure they had rides places, right? The same things that we would do for our own children, our own relatives, because they even probably more so than our own relatives need that extra help and deserve to feel that kind of love and connection and warm embrace. We're gonna look at one more text before we do Mariv. We'll look at two more texts before we do Mariv. I want us to look at Leviticus 23:22, because this is a practical application for something that we could do even in today's day, that actually does not have to do specifically with refugees, but just has to do with those who might be, I'll use the word embarrassed, though I hope that's never how someone feels, but unknown of how to fend for themselves in a new place, right? So maybe they feel like maybe it's a language barrier, maybe it is transportation, maybe it's just that they live in a part of town that they don't yet know how to navigate. So Leviticus 23:22 tells us, when you reap the harvest of your land, which I'm sure we're all doing in Los Angeles, you shall not reap all the way to the edges of your field. So I will make this Los Angeles appropriate. If you have fruit trees on your lawn that face out to the street or are on the sidewalk, not feeling the need to bring all of that into your own home, but leaving it so that if people are walking down the street in need of a lemon, loquat, I'm trying to think of things that grow around here, the oranges, great, that people can take them and don't have to feel embarrassed asking for that food, but it's actually there for them. The stranger, no, reading the wrong verse, sorry. Or gather the gleanings of your harvest. You shall leave them for the poor and the stranger, because I, Adonai, am your God. So this commandment is coming directly from God to say, you should know the godliness in another person. People need to eat. People need to take care of themselves, but that it's actually our responsibility to make sure that someone also feels like a human when they're being taken care of, and not embarrassed to ask for food, not feeling as though because they don't necessarily know how to ask or what to ask for, that it might not be possible for them, but to just make it available and have it be there in case it's needed. This verse is actually the reason that we started the fridge at Temple Beth Am, because my first year at Beth Am, there were multiple people, but one in particular in our community who I came across who was food insecure. And I didn't want that person to have to ask for food or to ask to have to take home leftovers from Kiddush, because that can be embarrassing to someone. So we just created a fridge where if that person was in need of food any day of the week, there were going to be leftovers in a fridge for them to come and to get it. So that's this kind of experience, right? Today, during the presentation, they said something about toiletries, and I knew that we had tons of toiletries in the office because when we asked people to give us things for Israel, people decided that tampons and deodorant were what the soldiers needed. So the office has been full of those things. They didn't. So our office was full of those things. So we were trying to give it to the mayor's office because we were told that the unhoused needed it for new housing. That was in November and the mayor's office still hasn't come. So I said to them today, take it. Just take it. I would rather it be going to those who need it without them even asking us for it than so Beth Am did a little bit of an extra mitzvah today, which was really nice. This last text here, and then I'm happy to hear some comments before we start Mariv in about 10 minutes. The last text here is a text that you're going to know. This is part of the New Colossus by Emma Lazarus. And it says here, and this is, I don't know about you, but the beginning of this passage is not usually where I hear it most quoted, but I thought this was a really interesting beginning. A mighty woman with a torch, whose flame is the imprisoned lightning, and her name, Mother of Exiles. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free, the wretched refuse of your teeming shore. Send these, the homeless, tempest tossed, to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door. So thoughts before I put it all together, thoughts about any of these, any of the,
I didn't make that trilogy because I know that at the farmer's market / the Grove on Saturday, they're gonna have drives for toiletries, shoes that are in pretty good condition. They're gonna have a
nice. We didn't. That's why we had them. Because people just brought them, but we didn't actually have one. Yeah, Gary. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Seeing it again, I don't know if you all heard this, but seeing it again, you can see very much, I can now, with recent years' perspective, that why certain people of the extreme conservative political movement in our country want to somehow find a counter story. These weren't original words. The this isn't what the statutory.
Sure, sure. Well, and it's interesting, of course, it's one of the reasons I put it on the source sheet. It's interesting that anybody who wants to change these words should just go into the Old Testament and see that we're kind of saying the same thing. We're just not saying it in poetic language like this. But I think you're right, Jason, that it's when reading it in this context, it's easy to see how those who do not believe in this kind of, I'll just say America, or this type of freedom, could see this as something that needs to be interpreted differently. Yeah, yeah. Other thoughts? Yeah, Tyson.
It's not just saying like, if they come to you, then take care of them. It's like saying, send them.
Yes.
Actually saying it's like, and
Yes, beautiful. I just got chills when you said that. Yeah, exactly. That there's this idea that this torch is here because we actually want you to see that we want you, not just, oh, we might have space for you, but we want you to find us and we want you to come in, not just, as Tyson just said, not just, oh, once you're here, we'll then figure out a way to deal with you and take care of you, but rather come to us. And whoever comes, we will make sure that that you are cared for and that you are part of us. Obviously, as I'm even saying this, it's like such an ideal, right? It's not always realistic, but it's an ideal for sure. Other thoughts about the whole text sheet? Yeah, Joey.
But yeah, it's about the leanings. One
Yeah.
Modern example I use for myself is say I see a plastic bottle or aluminum can on the ground and I don't pick it up for myself, leave it for a homeless person to find. They need CRV more than I do.
That's nice. That's nice. So Joey was saying that maybe leaving some of the recycling that we might see for someone else to be able to pick up and then get some coins for. That's great. Great. Thanks, Aviva. Mm-hmm.
Like the same concept of the opposite sides of
Mm-hmm.
the coin,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like love someone and also don't do this.
Mm-hmm.
It reminds me of when we think about Meets Code, there's positive and negative commandments.
Mm-hmm.
And even like when it comes to Shabbat, we might not all like be Summer Shabbat or whole Shabbat at a certain level, but there's ways that we like positive commandments
Mm-hmm.
and like things to refrain from. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes it's easier to do one
Mm-hmm.
or the other. Like it could be very easier to say that like, oh, it's easier for me to do these kind of things that are like positive with an outstretched hand.
Right.
But it's harder for me to like refrain or the opposite. And I think it's really interesting. We're being a call to action with both of these, like say quotes from the text. That even if one is easier for you, you might think that like you're off the hook. You don't have to do
Sure.
the other way. But it's how do we also like invite people in? How do we like treat them as one we treat it? And how do we also not take advantage of them? Then just to not do what maybe is just easiest for us, but
Yeah.
also like put ourselves out a little bit.
Sure.
And I think that's so interesting because it's hard to do. I feel like there's many ways, and I'm like, how am I going to show up for someone
Mm-hmm.
that is unhoused or refugee?
Mm-hmm.
And it might be like, oh well, this is more my personality. It's just easier for me to do this
Sure.
or not do this. But there's really a call to action here to just step out of your own comfort zone.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think I'm going to respond, Rosa. I think that there's also ways of looking at the two books, right? Which is taking your point to like a bit of a a meta level. Not that it wasn't profound, but taking it like beyond the quote itself. Whereas Exodus is a story of moving us from individuals to community. And therefore, how do we also take care of those people who aren't yet in community, but who could be? And Leviticus is a book of laws, right? And so not necessarily taking in the feelings or the empathy, but rather this is what you must do, because if we're not given those boundaries, maybe we wouldn't even do it. So I love that you made that comparison, because I think we could often make that comparison for Leviticus and Exodus as a whole, of looking at the different stories that we have within it. So I'm gonna wrap us up so that we can do Birkat Hamazon and then do Mariv. Joy, if you can find Birkat in there, that would be really awesome. They didn't give us benchers, right? Okay, great. We can use the Siddur. I just don't know what page it's on. So, okay, tell me in 1 second. So what I'm hoping you glean, no pun intended, from this is that there is a lot of work to be done much of which I don't even know about. Tyson knows more than I do. And there's even more that we all could be learning about how to deal with those who are both in our midst and we see who are in need of this kind of help, and that those who we don't yet know and are very much in need of this help. We in our own communities are dealing with this in America, in Los Angeles, in Carthay Circle, right? This is something that's very central to the lives that we are living. And also, I want us to think about the fact that when hostages are released and when things are being wrapped up in this war post October 7th, there are going to be lots of people who are finding themselves in places that are not their homes, right? And that's not a political statement, that just is a fact, right? And how are we going to take care of one another and make sure that right now, I only have heard from Israelis, so I'll only speak from that perspective. Right now, Israelis who are not in their homes because they can't be in their homes in the South or whatever, do not want to be called refugees. Yeah, I haven't spoken to people in the North, but I'm sure it's the same case. They don't want to be called refugees because they still feel like by being in Israel, they are home, which is a really profound statement. But we are going to be dealing with people who are in a category of needing refuge. And how are we going to continue to take care of those who are in our immediate midst, but also widen our glances and widen our support to those who overseas are also going to need that same kind of love and care and feeling of being welcomed in, even if we can't be literally bringing them through our doors every week. So I hope that this gives us a perspective on how this Shabbat, hopefully, from this point forward, we are doing a lot more work to be giving refuge to those who are in need of it. And I hope Parshat Mishpatim, for all of the Torah that I didn't bring on it, is a very meaningful week for all of you. So Shabbat Shalom. And thank you again to Tyson and Naomi for having us here. Great. So we will pass out the Sidurim. We will do Bir Kana Mazon on page 287. Oh, just 87. Oh, okay. On page 87, excuse me. And then we will do Mariv. Nina, did you want to lead Mariv? No? Yeah. Okay. So then Nina will lead us in Mariv. Those of you who are on whatever devices we have, live stream, Zoom, whatever this is, feel free to join in on Bir Kana Mazon, but then we will do Mariv, and then we'll do Havdalah around 6:04, which is when it is. All right. Does anyone want to lead us in Bir Kana Mazon? Okay. Just yeah. Let's just. Is there anybody else who doesn't often lead Bir Kana Mazon who wants to lead? Okay, Joey, you're on. You don't have to speak too loudly.
Yeah, I know.
But just for them.
Right, yeah. Shir Hamalo Peshuva Donai et Shiva Sion Ainu Kecholamim Azim Ale Sechokinu Ulshonenu Rina Azim Meruva Goim Igdil Adonai La Soti Mele Igdil Adonai La Soti Manu Ainu Semechim Shuva Adonai et Shavitenu Kafikim Banegeb Azorim Bedima Berina Iktoru Halachelech Uvacho No Se Meshech Hazara Bo Yavo Berina No Se Alumos Chave Rein Varech Yehi Shem Adonai Mevorach Me'ata Ve'adolam Birshut Chavirai Nevrechel Hinishech Al Nemishelo Baruch Al Hinishech Al Nemishelo Tuvo Chayinu Baruch Hu Baruch Shemo Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Chazan et Haolam Kulo Betuvo Bechein Bechesed Rachamim Huno Tain Lechem Lechol Basar Ki Lelam Chasdo Uvtuvo Hagadol. Tamid l'chasar lanu ve'ayachsar lanu ma'azon l'olam ba'ed v'avur Shem Hagadol. Kiwel zanim farnes lakol. Umetiv lakol. Umechin ma'azon l'chol beriotam asher bara. Baruch atah Adonai Hazan et hakol.
If you haven't finished, please continue at your own pace. Nina's going to lead us in Mariv. I think, yeah, it's in there. Yeah.
281 is Slim Shalom.
There you go. It's on page 264 in the Siddur that everyone else will be using. And we're gonna face east, which is this way. So Nina's just gonna have her back to you, but I think that's okay. Maybe it's my height, which is awesome. If you're able to do so, please rise. והורכם יכפר ולא ישחית, והרבה להשיבה ולא יאיר כחמתו. אדוני הושיע המלך יעננו ויום קוראנו. ברכו את אדוני המבורך. ברוך אדוני ברך לעולם ועד. חי וקיים תמיד ימלוך עלינו לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני המעריב ערבים. אהבת עולם בית ישראל ומחלתה. ואהבתך לא תוציא ממנו לעולמים, ברוך אתה אדוני, אוהב עמו ישראל, אוהב עמו ישראל. שמע ישראל, אדוני אלוהינו, אדוני אחד. אדוני אלוהיכם אמת, אמת אמונה כוסות וחיים עלינו. ומלכותו ברצון קיבלו עליהם, משה ובני ישראל הכנו שירה בשמחה רבה, ואמרו כולם. מי כמוך בעלים אדוני, מי כמוך נדע בקודש, נורתי לא תוסף אלה, מלכות קרוב בניך, וקיים לפני משה, זה אלי הנביא אמרו. אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד, ונאמר כיפת אדוני את יעקב, וגלו מיד חזק ממנו, ברוך אתה אדוני, גאל ישראל. ושמור צאתנו ובינו לחיים ושלום מעתה ועד עולם, ברוך אתה אדוני שומר עמו ישראל לעד. ברוך אדוני לעולם אמן ואמן. כי המלכות שלך היא לעולמי תמלך בכבוד, כי אין לנו מלך אלא אתה, ברוך אתה אדוני, המלך בכבודו תמיד ימלוך עלינו לעולם ועד, ועל כל מעשיו. יגדל ויקדש שמי רבה, ויעמד דברי קראתי ועמך מלכותי בחייכון וימיכון ובחיי לכל בית ישראל, ועגלה בזמן קריב אמרו אמן. היי שמי רבה מברך לעולם עולמי עלמיה. יתברך וישבח ויתפאר ויתמר ויתנשא, יתהדר ויתעלה ותלוש מי דקודשה ברכו. לאלה מכל ברכתה ושעתה, ששבחתה ונחמתה, דמים בעלמה ואמרו אמן. The whispered on me down on page 270. If you have not finished your Amidah, please continue at your own pace with the Chatzi Kaddish on page 279.
יתגדל ויקרש מרבה, ויעמד דבר קרתי ועמק בקותי וחי חונים ימי חונים חי לכל בית ישראל, והגל בזמן קריב ואמרו אמן, יהי שמי רבה מברך לעולם עמי ומיה, יתברך וישלח ויתבר ויתרם ויתנשא, יתדע ויתעלה ויתעלה שמי דקודשה בריחו, לאלה מכל ברכתה ושירתה, ששוכרתה ונחמתה דמירם בעמה ואמרו אמן.
You'll be great. I can help.
That's fine. יקרא עיני ועיניהו עמו אנוכי וצרה אכלתהו ועבדהו אורך ימים אשביעהו וערהו בישועתי אורך ימים אשביעהו וערהו בישועתי.
We'll turn back on to page 216.
ואתה קדוש יושב תהילות ישראל וקרא זה ואמר ותישא עיני רוח ואשמע אחרי כל רעש גדול ברוך כבוד אדוני ממקומו אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד ויבטחו בך יודע שמך כי לא עזבת דורשך אדוני אדוני חפץ למען צדקו יגדיל תורה וידיר.
Turn back to page 290.
280.
280. I knew there was a zero. Kaddish Shalom.
יתגדל ויקדש שם רבה ויעמד דבר קראתי והמלך מלכותי וחייכון ויומייכון ובחייך בית ישראל והגלה בזמן קריב ואמרו אמן יהי שמי רבה מברך לעולם ומעולם יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרום ויתנשא יתהדר ויתעלה ויתעלה שמי דקודשה בריחו לעילא מכל בחטא ושעתה ששוחטה ונחמתה דמים בעמה ואמרו אמן תתגבר צלותון ובותון דכל ישראל קודם אבוהן דיבי שמיה ואמרו אמן יהי שלמה רבה מן שמיה וחיים עלינו ועל ישראל ואמרו אמן עושה שלום במרומה הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן
Elena, page 281.
עלינו לשבח אדוני ככתוב בתורתך אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו אחד.
Corners Kaddish, page 282.
יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה
Amen.
בעלמא דברה קירותי וימליך מלכותי בחייכון וביומייכון ובחיי דכל בית ישראל בעגלה ובזמן קריב אמרו
Amen.
יהי שמי רבה מברך לעולם ולעולמיה יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי דקודשה
בריחו
לעילא מן כל ברכתה ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה תאמירם בעלמא ואמרו אמן יהי שלמה רבה מן שמיה וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן עושה שלום במרומה הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן.
All right, we'll conclude with Havdalah Yashar to Nina. I'm using multiple Sidurim and leaving Mario.
Help her find Alina in the slim shalom, by the way.
All right. If people would like to come in as close as you feel comfortable doing so, I'm not going to try to navigate to the middle, I don't think. But if people want to come closer to the set, you are more than welcome to. Much better matches at this phone than at Tumblr. Well, yeah. It takes me like 6 tries every Shabbos. Oh, look at that. Yanai, nanai, 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 nanai,
הנה אל ישועתי, אבטח ולא אפחד, כי עוזי וזמרת יד, אדוני לי לישועה. ושמיים וששון ממעייני הישועה, לאדוני הישועה. על עמך ברכתך סלע, אדוני צבאות עמנו, משכב לנו אלוהי יעקב סלע, אדוני צבאות אשר ידם בוטח בך, אדוני הושיע. המלך יעננו ביום קורנו ליהודים, הייתה אורה ושמחה וששון ויקר, כן תהיה לנו כוס ישועות תפסה, ובשם אדוני אקרא. יין עיני, יין עיני, יין עיני, יין עיני. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, בורא פרי הגפן. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, בורא מיני ושמים. Oh, that's okay. I don't have to be first. Baruch ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei meorei ha'esh. Baruch ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hamavdil ben kodesh lechol, ben or lechoshech, ben Yisrael le'amim, ben yom hashvihi לששת ימי המעשה. ברוך אתה אדוני המבדיל בין קודש לחול. המבדיל בין קודש לחול, חטאותינו ימחול, זרענו וחסרנו ירבה ירבה כחול, וככוכבים בלילה. זרענו וחסרנו ירבה ירבה כחול, וככוכבים בלילה. שבוע טוב, 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 שבוע טוב. אליהו הנביא, אליהו התשבי, אליהו, אליהו, אליהו הגלעדי, במהרה בימינו יבוא אלינו, עם משיח בן דוד, עם משיח בן דוד. Shavua Tov, everyone. Before we leave this home, let's make sure that it looks the way that it did when we came in. All of the sheets can be recycled because I didn't put God's name on them. All the Sidurim should go back into the box, and then we can throw away all of our trash from the food that we ate. And then if you want to do some vacuuming, and if you want to put the furniture back. Right, exactly.
This is for your channel?
Yeah.
Just the box? I mean, just the.
Right. Yeah. Rosie, nothing spilled. I just tripped on the microphone.
Okay.
Okay.